All right, Brittyn, what are your top 3 tips for parents of picky eaters, something that plagues many a family?
Yeah, so it's so hard because children on the autism spectrum are so likely to be picky eaters because of sensory issues. And I see all the time that parents are trying all of these approaches that have been recommended by their friends or family or pediatricians that just do not work for kids on the spectrum. Usually this comes down to like they'll eat when they're hungry, or just get them to take one bite, just one bite, and they'll eat. And all of these usually backfire. They just don't work for kids on the spectrum. And so basically my job is helping parents help their kids expand their diet in a way that works for them and their sensory needs while they can still hit their nutritional needs as well. I have lots of tips. So I have a hard time narrowing it down to 3, but if I had to do that, I would say, number 1, I want parents to take inventory of their child's diet. What are they currently eating? Even if they just have 5 foods and you can list them off, write them down. Let's think through what's the sensory experience of these foods. And a lot of times you'll start to see different patterns. Okay, these are all crunchy foods. These are all like beige colored foods. Or these are all soft foods. You might be able to just rattle it off the top of your head as well. My child likes beige and crunchy foods. And honestly, that's where most kids stand. They love those foods, like chicken nuggets, French fries, etc. A lot of times kids love those foods because they're predictable. They're going to be the same every single time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so kids know what to expect. And also the sensory profile of those foods is like top notch. It's perfect. Crunchy and salty. It's wonderful. So why would you want to eat something green and mushy? And then number 2, as you're taking inventory of those foods, thinking of some of those common denominators, let's brainstorm some new ideas based on what they're already eating. So if your child's only eating chicken nuggets, French fries, potato chips, and yogurt, well, all of those are kind of a similar color. We have some common textures in there. We might not want to throw in some green broccoli because that's nothing like what they currently eat. And so kids can go into this like flight or fight of, holy cow, what is this new food? I'm not touching that. I'm not even coming close to it. Let's think of something that might be closer to what they're already eating. And it doesn't have to be the healthiest option right away. You can work there. I think a lot of parents just want their kids to eat veggies. And I think that's a great goal, but that doesn't just happen overnight.
We can't expect them to maybe eat the rainbow, right?
Yeah.
Like eat the rainbow overnight, because that's probably feels, really extreme to them. Like this looks completely different, feels completely different than everything else that I'm eating right now.
And I think it's an awesome goal. I think it's such a good goal, but it definitely takes time to get there. And it's like, the child's never seen broccoli before or carrot. You cannot expect them to eat it the first time that they see it, especially if they have some like sensory processing, going on there as well. We definitely want to allow them time to get used to it and explore it, which kind of leads me to my tip number 3 is we really need to get away from the idea that eating is the only win, that actually eating and chewing and swallowing a food is the only win. Now, what I mean by that is that there are so many other little wins along the way that help them get to eating. So being more comfortable around a food, feeling more confident around it, feeling less stressed is going to help kids be more open to trying something. So it might start out as, this food is on the table and that's as far as we can get right now. Maybe next time the food's on their plate or on a plate next to their actual plate. From there, maybe we touch it with a fork, we smell it, we touch it with our hands, we touch it to our mouth, and then we lick our lips. Like there's so many little steps. And parents who have extreme picky eaters get that having a new food on their plate is a huge win. And so, but then they also get down on themselves that the kid didn't try it. So just know that there's all these little steps that help get us to where we want to be, and we can't expect kids to do that overnight. So just taking little steps along the way with the actual food, but also the steps to eating the food are huge things that need to be talked about more.
and this might be, this might be what you just answered, but I was going to ask too, what, really about how can we as parents, help our kids really explore, which you kind of talked about, like all these different ways, because there is substantial stress about nutrition as well. So what can we do? Because you hit it on the head. It's for many of our kids, it's more than just being like finicky or, really thinking, well, okay, I can eat this sometimes, but this is really what I prefer. I mean, there can be deep, real, very real aversions, right, to that, for that child. So how can we start getting them to explore while the parents, are really stressing about, the lack of nutrition that we think, might be happening with our kids?
Yeah, I think making food more approachable, a little less overwhelming. And sometimes that means starting off with a really, really, really small amount. Like I often say to my clients, like pinky fingernail size, like even smaller sometimes. Like if we're doing riced cauliflower, I want one piece of riced cauliflower. And so starting off really small, also aligning with their sensory needs at the time. The more we expose them to new things that are less overwhelming, the more we can gradually start to introduce things that are a little less like the foods that they currently eat. So starting super small is a really good place. And then encouraging like small steps forward. So if they're overwhelmed to eat the food, let's talk about it. I've actually seen kids who do really well. If they cannot have that food on the table or even look at it, we even will look at it on YouTube, look at photos of it on their phone. And I see a lot of kids, especially those on the spectrum, just do so well with technology that sometimes they just learn better by first seeing it on the phone. It's not threatening. And then we can gradually get it into our space in real life.
Priming them, right? For everything, right? It goes across the board, priming, showing, it could be a social story, maybe even a video of, I was thinking as you were saying that, a video of another kiddo eating that, right? Whatever, just really, working our way up instead of just expecting like, yeah, here's a bowl, like, let's go for it.
Yes, so true. And there's a lot of children's shows too that will show, Daniel Tiger eating, X, Y, and Z, or and Bluey, whatever it is that they really like. And sometimes seeing that modeling from something that they're already invested in can be a really great introduction, so that they're able to translate that from something that they love into real life too. Sometimes that exposure makes it a little less overwhelming.
Absolutely. We don't always want to highlight the things that are wrong, but I think it's really important. In the autism world, there's a lot of myths, no matter what you're talking about. I would love for you to address some of the most common myths in regards to autism nutrition, and then please set the record straight so we have, the real deal.
So I kind of alluded to one of them, and one of the biggest myths is they'll eat when they're hungry. And I harp on this all the time because it just drives me absolutely crazy. And it makes me so sad for the parents who receive this advice, because it is so backwards. A lot of people will say, just take away the foods that they will eat and then provide them with new healthy foods. And when they get hungry enough, they'll eat it and they'll start to like it. Well, the problem with that, with autism, is that, feeding or picky eating a lot of times is rooted in that sensory, processing issues or sensory sensitivity or sensory overwhelm. And that does not go away with hunger. In fact, it usually gets worse. And so it's just reinforcing this cycle where they become even more picky and lose trust and confidence, and ends up in a worse place than you started. And when people receive this advice, I just politely say, thanks for your input, and then just turn around and just throw it in the trash. And don't contemplate it, because it's just not any advice that I ever see working out in their favor. But unfortunately, that's one of the most common recommendations out there.
Yes. So yeah. I think everyone can relate to the advice that almost feels like, I don't know, grandmother advice or something, where it's sort of like, this is what's worked for us. Just try this, right? I think every parent raising a kid, with disabilities understands that sort of well-meaning advice that, might work for other children, but is, it doesn't work for our kids. There's probably a lot of parents who've, tried every single thing that people might suggest, and they're still like beating their head against a wall. So yeah. So what are some of the other big areas that you feel like are, that parents are hearing that we need to avoid?
One is just take a bite. So if a child is not ready, if they are already in a sensory overwhelm, eating, I'll back up, because eating is one of our most sensory rich experiences that we have as humans. All at the same time, we smell the food, we taste it, we're feeling it, we see it, it's everything all at once. And so for a child who's already maybe in a sensory overwhelm, eating is just one of those things that quickly escalates. And so that's why children want those highly predictable foods, especially for kids on the spectrum. And so what we don't want to do is push them past their sensory threshold, because that could negatively affect your feeding journey, because they feel, oh, I've been forced to do this. I remember that it made me feel very overwhelmed, or it made me feel X, Y, and Z. Not only will I never eat that food again, I'm not going to try any new things if I'm forced to eat them. Or maybe they're like, anything that's green, I'm not going to eat anymore because it made me feel this way. So we just don't want to force kids past their sensory threshold. And that's why taking those small steps along the way can be helpful. And over time, they learn how to do that themselves too, and take those gradual steps forward.
I think that's so important, because you don't want the whole of eating to become this aversive experience that maybe even those predictable foods become, an issue. So, and that can go, even beyond sensory. As an aside, my daughter has Crohn's. And so, that's one of the things, right? There's pain associated with eating. So that's a very physical symptom, right? And different than what we're talking about. But sometimes, right, it can be so strong for these children that it almost feels like, a physical aversion or pain if they're being, loaded up beyond their sensory limits, just like you're saying. And then it becomes a negative experience as a whole.
It's so true. And GI issues are a great example of something that can get in the way of eating as well, whether it's Crohn's or chronic constipation, chronic diarrhea. Those are all so uncomfortable. And sometimes kids will self-limit because they don't know what's causing them the pain. And also, if I'm feeling pain in my tummy, well, I'm not going to want to be the most, diverse eater. I'm going to eat things that feel comfortable and are not going to pose a major threat. So I see a lot of kids who are both really picky eaters and chronically constipated. And it's like this never-ending cycle of the picky eating causing the constipation, and then constipation causing the picky eating. And it's hard to get out of sometimes.
Definitely. Were there any other myths that you wanted to cover?
That not all kids on the autism spectrum have to go gluten and dairy free. That would be one thing. So I will say that gluten and dairy free can be really helpful for some kids. It's common to be sensitive to them. And I've seen kids do incredibly with removing those, but I think that people treat that as the gold standard and let that get in the way of any other nutrition approaches. So they say, before I do anything else, they have to be gluten and dairy free. Number one, that's not true. There's so many other nutrition changes that you can make where you can start to see progress. That might be, adding in some protein with breakfast, and you notice they stay fuller longer and their blood sugar stays up, and they have better behavior at school or better focus. That's one small thing you could do. Just for example, a complete diet overhaul, especially for a child who is already limited in the foods that they're eating, and 80% of it might be gluten and dairy. Trying to completely transition out overnight or really quickly can be super overwhelming and can set you back in general. So for some people, that's definitely something that can be really helpful. And I don't want to discourage people from trying it, because like I said, I've seen great progress with some kids. Other kids, we've done it and we haven't seen any change. And so it's like, at the end of the day, what's the point? If we're going to be extremely limited already, why limit it more? And so I just encourage people to get out of the mindset that we have to be removing all these foods. Food sensitivities and allergies are definitely something that you need to take into consideration. but it's not as simple as that. There's no one diet for every single person.
That's exactly what I was going to say, right? The one thing, again, everyone in our community should understand and does understand is that there's not a one size fits all for anything. So, if anyone's telling you this is the only thing you should try, that's usually the red flag, right? Because we have to pay attention to our children, see what's working for them. And it's great to hear all this advice, no matter what advice you're getting. And then you really have to think about your kiddo and figure out what's right for them.
Yes, it's so true. You know what's right for your child too. And if something does not feel right, it's going against your intuition, don't do it.
Exactly.
Also, finding providers that are going to support you in what you don't want to do or what you do want to do is so critical, and not pushing something on you that doesn't feel right to you. I always say, if you and your provider are just really not aligning, fire them and find a new one. There's nothing saying that you cannot fire whoever it is, whether it's a pediatrician, dietitian. If you're not aligning, move on, and you totally can. Don't put up with something that doesn't align with your needs or values.
It's so important. I was just having a conversation about this the other day. So many parents, they're overwhelmed, and it's hard to sort of trust. It's hard to get into somebody. It's hard to, and so, frequently parents might go against their instincts because, again, it's like, we're the professionals. This is what we're telling you. Of course, we should take in everything our providers are, saying, but you're taking that in. You can get a second opinion. You can fire them. You can move on. Like, you have to, you do have to work with somebody that is working with the priorities of your family as well. And that can go in the other way, right? Like, very traditional, like, don't try any of this. That's a fad, like, and there could be value in that, but you have to, there's so much information out there. You take it all in, and then you figure out what works for your family, and talk to as many people as possible, always. Yeah. And I know you also, I think this is something that a lot of parents don't know about, and you've talked about the Autism Nutrition Library. So I would love for you to tell us more about that and how parents can access that and use that for their everyday lives.
For sure. Yeah. So the Autism Nutrition Library, it's a membership that I created because I just saw such a gap in the autism nutrition field. I'm a Facebook group lurker. I love being in groups, seeing what people are saying, even parent support groups. And my brother's on the autism spectrum. And so I learn a lot from other parents and from my clients as well. But I see a lot of people posting on nutrition, and the replies that they were getting, I was just like covering my eyes, like doing everything I could to not be a dietitian in that moment. Because not only were a lot of times it was just flat out wrong, whatever like nutrition information was being given. Sometimes if it were ever dangerous, I would actually step in and be like, hey, you need to, evaluate this, and this, and move forward.
There are, right? I mean, there are, and well-meaning people, parents, or, who are really trying to make a difference, but there are some really scary things that go around that are dangerous, probably to any child, right? That, really shocking sometimes.
So I created this membership site for parents who have children on the autism spectrum. I actually have adults, like autistic adults, who join my program or my membership as well, just to get research-based, like evidence-based information when it comes to nutrition for autism, not only just diet, but supplements, conditions and symptoms, nutrients, foods, all the things written in an easy to understand way for parents. Like, get the information you need and get out. I just saw this huge gap and wanted to find a way to help.
All right. Well, that's incredible. It's the kind of resource I think most parents wish like they knew from day one, right? And I also want to say, when we're talking about some of the kind of the wacky things that we hear as parents, it's also, the other end of the spectrum where we might be going to our doctors and specialists and hearing very traditional information that doesn't feel like it helps our kids, right? So, parents are just trying to find what is right for their child. And so it's great to have resources like this that are coming together that aren't just giving a one size fits all, that are showing like research backed information and always breaking down things in steps for parents to know what to tackle and when. That's so needed. I mean, like you said, huge gap. So thank you for putting that together for families. I'm excited for more families to find that. And lastly, It's one of my favorite questions, but what is the question that parents should be asking, but that they rarely do? What do they need to be thinking about?
I encourage when people are starting with nutrition, I just encourage them to think in the lens of how can I help my child feel their best? And that's going to look different for every single parent. And when kids can feel their best, when they can feel better, they can focus better, they can do better in school and therapies and just life. And that's what I want for all of my clients. And so sometimes it takes some digging, it takes some support in order to find what kind of approach or diet or combination of things is going to help them feel their best. So I really encourage parents, if they're feeling lost or just feeling overwhelmed with it all, because there is a lot when it comes to nutrition for autism, get in touch, whether it's with me or another autism nutrition professional to help guide you, because you definitely don't have to do this on your own. It's great to be surrounded also by other autism parents or special needs parents who get it and are working on the same goals as you. So, I like my membership, I have a community forum so that they can meet others, but I also run small group coaching programs so that they can work alongside with other parents. And you all have such an amazing resource as well to build community and support parents. And I just think, that's a really important piece to all of this as well.
It really is, because it's scary. It's terrifying, right? Like there's a lot on parents' plates. And then when you get down to the just very basic needs of a person, eating, nutrition, sleep, right? And so many of these things are so disrupted for our kids, which it's just this never-ending cycle of stress for parents. And so to talk to other parents, yes, to be in that community of parents who get it, who are trying new things, and then also having experts to be able, to bounce things off of. So you don't feel like you're always just talking kind of in a vacuum. And if you really need that like specialized, like, hey, does this make sense? That's so important for families. Yeah, we can't say that enough. Community is so important. And we're so happy that you provided that for families in such a stressful situation. But I'm imagining, all these little kernels of cauliflower rice being given like one kernel at a time. And there's hope, right? There's hope. And that's the other thing, community. We want to hear what's working for other parents. And so, please share in the comments, like what has worked for you? What has been the game changer for your family, or what has been absolutely terrible? And of course, what's great for one family will be absolutely, the opposite for another. But it's great that we share those stories and what is working and what isn't, because in what is something that can feel like very lonely, unfortunately, there is a large community that understands. So when we all come together, hopefully we can, move families and children forward. So thank you for helping us do that.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome.